The Canby Report was produced and recorded on the traditional territories of the Coquitlam, Mississaugas of the Credit, Anishinaabe, Chippewa, Haudenosaunee, and Wendat peoples.
It's July 17th, 2026, and there are 92 days left until the Vancouver municipal elections. This is the Canby Report. I'm Matthew Naylor.
And I'm Ian Bushfield, back from summer vacation.
Yep, which we definitely planned and definitely had nothing to do with just, well, summer vacation, really.
I was camping the last 2 weeks. Not going to talk about the weeks before that. It was just a very, very busy June for me.
It's been a busy time. I started a new job, basically, so I'm also beset by obligations of the scheduling variety. Nevertheless, we are here to bring you all the news you can use from Vancouver and its environs. And of course, we do this with the help of you, our lovely patrons. So if you want to support citizen journalism in Vancouver, please visit patreon.com/Canby Report.
Yes, sign up at patreon.com/Canby Report.
Patreon.com/Canby Report.
You can watch the video of our last podcast, and I might put the video of this podcast up as well.
In high definition.
Singles of you watch the last one. Not zero, at least. So I didn't really announce it. So bonus Patreon exclusive. You can watch me fidget around as I try to record this.
Yeah,
unmedicated.
And you can also see me vaping as I do through every podcast.
We got lots to talk about. Things are happening. There's 90 days left until the election, 3 months to go. Council is busy at work this summer, but not so busy that they've decided they need to meet all of the time that they were scheduled, as Brian Montague pitched it to council and got support of his ABC colleagues to call off the last planned meeting before the election at the end of July.
Well, far be it from us to criticize people taking some time off in the summer or any other time, but what exactly he's thinking when he's doing this, I'm not exactly sure, other than, of course, July 29th, that meeting that was scheduled and is now canceled, was the last time that councillors would be able to present new motions to council. That isn't available to them now. However, there is quite a bit of business going up to them, so I do wonder why they felt the need to scupper this last meeting.
The official reasoning Brian Montague brought forward is to try to reduce the amount of work staff have because they are already overloaded. It's obviously frustrating for opposition councillors who had a host of additional motions they wanted to bring in advance of the election, presumably. Sarah Kirby-Young was apparently also working on a motion that her colleague killed, and I guess she voted to not get to present. Council will be having a lot of extraordinary meetings to fill and complete all of the work they are working on right now, which is quite substantial. They are trying to approve the Villages plan. They have potential towers in Gastown to approve, and they have to approve a plebiscite for the election so that the city can borrow money to fulfill its capital plan, something we don't really talk about much on those podcasts and generally isn't controversial, but when you go and vote, there's usually a "can my city have some money" question that if you vote against, you're an asshole.
Usually. Every time that it's come up so far for us, you should vote for the city capital plan because the city should be able to borrow some money.
Yeah, if you don't, they can't.
Yeah.
And then things don't get built.
Yep, which is bad. This is, of course, partially because the scheduling over the summer has been screwed up by the World Cup, you know, the gift that keeps on giving. Everyone seems to have enjoyed themselves, I guess. It's really been a snarl on traffic here in Toronto, so...
There was an initial wave of excitement and energy for it in Vancouver, and then the game days have all been pretty big. But in between, there's like a little bit to see downtown. I think the biggest frustration I hear from people around the World Cup is just nothing is going to stick around after it. Kind of like we had the Olympics and we saw a better sea to sky and the Canada line built through that, and Olympic built, like, stuff was
Richmond
built.
Oval. There was a ton of great infrastructure that the Olympics delivered, and also it allowed BC to coast through the 2008 recession just sort of secretly, because there was this massive secret stimulus that was already happening.
And we got nothing for World Cup. We got some parties, and it's all just going to go away. It's all so ephemeral. But maybe that's the legacy of the Ken Sim era.
Ephemerality. That's what I hope to think about when I think of the Ken Sim times. A time that does not leave a lasting scar on the city. Because I can't imagine great things. So let's just hope to emerge unscathed.
The stuff they are working on is pretty interesting. The Villages plan in particular has drawn a massive turnout at City Hall, largely oppositional, as most of these proposals to densify have come forward. The Villages plan comes from the Vancouver plan, and it's part of the rezoning process to actually turn this, oh, that would be cool document into, here's how we allow houses to get built. So it does over a dozen little communities around the city that allows density to happen off arterials and create these mini areas where we can have more housing, more amenities, more services. But it's drawn its critics, including Vampirism author and former planner Larry Beasley.
Oh no. It's important to have apartments and multi-unit development off arterials. Arterials are actually, I think, one of the worst places to place apartments because you are exposing more people to the contamination that accompanies arterial road traffic, as opposed to if you just have a single family home there, then it's just a single family that is contaminated by the road, as opposed to like 30 families, which does sound a little bit psychopathic, but is also true, perfectly logical and totally insane. But there are a bunch of these proposed villages around McDonald and West 16th, all the way down in the far northwest, down to Kerr Street and 54th Avenue, down towards the Riverlands. It's a major change in how Vancouver is densifying, and it also is one of the few plans that will encourage density both in the former city of Point Grey and in the former city of South Vancouver, where most of the villages are proposed.
It's important to note as well, this isn't like a let's put skyscrapers everywhere kind of plan. This is a low-rise housing proposal that allows some mixed-use development in these areas. Nevertheless, 230 people signed up to speak about it. So far, council has heard from 26. They will hear more on Monday. And they received 1,900 submissions opposing the plan versus 347 in support. And 54 who were just mixed.
If you're going to spend your time writing to city council, do take a position. Don't say, I hear you're talking about the villages, which are important. You're better off saving the electricity and your time. Just take a position. This is the kind of thing where public comment does matter, particularly in an election year. We encourage you, if you support these villages, to write into city council. It is important to get your voice heard. It doesn't take much time. You don't have to be articulate. You just have to stake out this clear position. I am in favor of the villages, and write that and put it in an email and just send it. Don't make this more complicated than it needs to be.
So I guess debate will continue through July on the Villages plan. I hope it passes. I think this council is eager to pass it. I guess the question will just be who actually votes against it. Whether Sean Orr takes that kind of principled, we had this opposition and they deserve to be heard, or that's kind of all I could see really voting against it.
No, I could see Pete Fry voting against this. Pete Fry will find a way to, oppose this clearly good thing. And, I mean, I'm not going to vote for any of them because I don't live in the city anymore. But I would be very disappointed in Sean Orr if he sops to what truly must be, and I would be shocked if they weren't, a cadre of property owners who are trying to protect the city from ever changing in any way ever.
Well, one thing that's not going to be changing anytime soon is the park board, as Ken Sim has come out and announced that he will no longer be fighting to abolish the park board in the upcoming...
We have like
For at least a few more months, he
Yeah.
will not be fighting to abolish the parkboard.
longtime listeners of the Canby Report may recall us announcing that Ken Sim had announced that he was not going to abolish the park board before, which was, of course, after he previously announced that he was going to abolish the park board. And then he, of course, again announced that he was going to abolish the park board, which led to a split in his party. And now he's not going to do that anymore. So fantastic, job well done, excellent politics.
He had this fantastic press release outside Kitsilano Pool where they were also announcing a change in policy that they won't be supporting the reservation system that exists for outdoor pools in Vancouver right now. Coquitlam here has it for some pools and not others. It's a way to manage demand, but it proves unpopular because people hate having to reserve a spot at a public pool.
But as it turns out, they don't have to, because as fantastic as Ken Sim's press conference may have been, it paled in comparison to the international, intercontinental, global headline-making appearance of Brendan Bastiavansky, Park Board Commissioner, at the Kitsilano Pool, where he had just dropped in for a swim.
Yeah, he and fellow Commissioner Scott Jensen showed up as a kind of counter press conference right after. Bastiavansky's argument was, I was out for a long distance swim, saw the mayor, figured I'd find out what's up, and walked up there. So he's just standing behind Jensen in a Speedo as they talk about the value of the park board and how no one can trust the mayor, and created just a perfect photo moment for what like Vancouver is in some ways.
The man has some confidence. I will tell you that it is an excellent use of, let's say, the bully pulpit. This is, of course, not the only thing that Ken Sim has been getting up to. He has, of course, threatened unprecedented action against the province, which he has not particularly articulated why that is necessary, but this is, of course, because, at least according to what he says, Vancouver continues to carry, and this is his quote, the greatest burden of BC's mental health, addiction, and public safety crises. And he's complaining about how the province has announced new involuntary care beds, but has excluded Vancouver. This isn't entirely unreasonable.
It's a bizarre announcement. So he's written this letter to the province because the province has said we are opening new involuntary care beds in Surrey and I think Maple Ridge using existing facilities or facilities that can be easily converted. Ken Sim's argument is, where's Vancouver's beds? To which Lisa Stacey and Penny DeFloss at CTV News write a pretty good article pointing out how the system works. They take to task the mayor and cops' claims about crime in Vancouver and what effect that has, where the biggest impacts are, and what actually involuntary care beds are being used for by the province, which is not anyone with any mental health issue who's living on the street. It's severely mentally ill and damaged people who have like broken their brain with street drugs, who the province believes can't care for themselves and are a threat. So those are people who are not necessarily kept in their community. One of the examples they point out is the person who was on a day pass and attacked people in Chinatown was on a day pass from Maple Ridge, I believe. And so there is a flow of people, and there's not a necessity that you are incarcerated effectively in the community in which you generally reside. Now, I think that is good to be close to home in these kind of situations, but these are borderline prisons, and having them where, like, I don't like them, but if we're going to have them, they don't necessarily need to be in every community. And for a community like Vancouver, where they have just said we can't have new safe consumption sites, to then bitch and moan about not getting involuntary care beds is horseshit.
It's one of those things that, like, when taken in isolation, the mayor's actions seem like reasonable. Of course, the mayor wants medical treatment in his community. That is the job of a mayor, is to want the things for his community and to advocate for them. It is his job to be a spokesman for the will of council and for the will of the city, and that's great. The concentration of the beds in Vancouver Coastal Health, which doesn't include Maple Ridge or Surrey, incidentally, that's Fraser Health. Vancouver Coastal Health is basically just
Richmond, Vancouver, North Shore, and Bella Coola.
Yes, but it's a system that is based on the old counties, and apparently we've decided that that is a very natural border, boundary road, of course, divider between Eastern and Western Canada. That one makes sense to me, but Bella Coola, not sure that it should be administered from an office tower in downtown Vancouver, but such is life. The mayor has not put himself in a position where he has a ton of moral authority to say, we're doing everything we can with respect to addictions and suffering and the negative externalities that this opiate crisis is causing.
And me, how many of those 100 nurses he actually hired that he promised?
I think 2, was it?
It was hard to count because he fudged the numbers a few times, but it definitely wasn't 100. He got his cops, though.
Thank God. What would we do without Ken Sims' 100? Jeez. He just sucks.
There's like 2 other angles to this that are really ridiculous. Number one is like, where are we going to put these involuntary care beds? Because if an overdose treatment facility is controversial, I can't imagine the famously like build this in my backyard kind of attitude we're seeing in Vancouver would be super excited to see this kind of facility opened. So unless he has something in mind, I think it's totally reasonable for the province to say, well, we're going to go where we have the best available options. Like, I legit can't think of a facility in Vancouver that would be appropriate for this.
I mean, he's envisioning a jail. Like,
yeah,
that's
what the province is using.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. I think involuntary care, I mean, I'm exposed on a fairly regular basis to a truly immense amount of human misery through my job. So I can see the argument for committing people to involuntary care. I can see the argument for committing people who would not meet the standard for this type of involuntary care, committing them to involuntary care. This is, a long rolling crisis that we truly have been casting about, throwing like everything at the wall, and unfortunately our floor is littered in noodles.
And then the other wild thing here is just threatening the province with unprecedented actions.
Well, I don't know what that means.
He doesn't know what that means. He was asked, and he could not name what that means. But just, it's like this vague threat. For what? I'm so confused by this story and angry at it. Anyway.
It's emptiness. It's just very frustrating to have no substance coming out of the mayor's office. That's what I'm looking for in a mayor, is substance and backbone. And, like, the last 2 haven't had both of them. Kennedy Stewart, the man had some substance, I guess, but just no strength of conviction or ability to get things through council. And Ken Sim is all bluster and nothing under the surface.
Well, sometimes he can get things through the staff office when people like his former communications advisor want their restaurant, the Bells and Whistles, to have a pop-up patio, as CTV News has found evidence that this pop-up plaza appeared in front of this restaurant and seemed to be fast-tracked earlier in the spring. And so they filed some FOIs and found out that staff in the mayor's office didn't push staff hard, but did inquire about a specific plaza that has this connection to the mayor. And it does seem like a little bit of energy from the mayor's office helped grease the wheels to get a plaza open.
This is specifically Ogi Radojcic, I think.
Good try. I don't know.
Mr. Radojcic of Gooseneck Hospitality. He's a partner at Gooseneck and owns Bells and Whistles, which is a spot on East 17th and Fraser Street. Bells and Whistles, I've been, it's fine, it's good. But they have this pop-up patio, and you would think they would learn, right? This is exactly what was happening to Michael Wiebe. This exact thing was the thing that arguably brought down Michael Wiebe. It certainly bedraggled his council term for ages and ages. It was just a weight around his neck. And apparently, that is, of course, rules for thee, not for me. It's just very frustrating. The operations manager, Connor Doherty, he's in the mayor's office. He sent a email to the city's general manager of engineering services and basically leaned on them to create this temporary plaza for FIFA.
I think you're taking the wrong lesson from the Weeb affair, which is when you look, I forget the exact ruling of the final court of appeal, but I think he was cleared in the end.
I think it was found that it was, in fact, a conflict, which is not what we had been...
Okay.
I remember this because we were very on the side of this not being a conflict, and I think we were wrong. But it was also not substantial enough for him to be removed from office, and it was a bit of a nullity at any rate, because the whole thing took years to adjudicate, which is stupid.
So the real lesson here, Matthew, is you can get away with it.
Yes, it's true. That is the lesson of this, is that from both sides of the aisle, you can corrupt your way into a patio. And that is the Vancouver way.
Well, speaking of money challenges at Metro Vancouver, it looks like CAO Jerry Dobrovolny is being thrown under the bus as the big issue as Metro Vancouver continues to face financial uncertainty following the North Shore wastewater treatment. Mike Hurley has moved at a recent Metro Vancouver board meeting to have him leave. This was leaked to the media, and the meeting itself was in camera, so we don't know what the actual results of that last night were. But we do know, as at the same time, Metro Vancouver continues to investigate leaks from within, including having basically every mayor and council that is at that table under investigation by Metro Van, because it's always important to find the leaks and not the massive wastes of funds.
I mean, it is a water treatment plant. But don't... The adorable phrase that they've used in this is that the hope is that this is going to be a mutual parting of the ways that will be arranged over the next several days between Metro Vancouver and the former, or soon-to-be former, chief administrative officer of the region. There's a law firm that's investigating these leaks. I think, truly, given what law firms charge, absolute waste of time. If a person, has decided that, they need to talk, it's just dumb. I understand that, personnel matters are kind of presumptively in camera, and they are something that should be taken with a certain amount of gravity. But, at a certain level, you are put in a position of incredible public trust, and your position is not one that should be shielded from public scrutiny.
Yeah, and Dobrovolny's salary was reportedly somewhere around $540,000 or higher. So it's not insubstantial. It's one that should merit some scrutiny, and I don't know whether he's the one who solely deserves the blame for the challenges. I know we reported on one of the stories where information was leaked from Metro Van to the contractor company via Mayor Richard Stewart of Coquitlam.
Very clever, Mayor Stewart, if that's...
Yeah.
Oopsie.
Yeah, that's the kind of situation we're dealing with here. But we'll keep following Metro Van and the challenges they face there, because I know it's going to be... There's definitely a contingent of councillors around the region who are eager to use Metro Van as their whipping tool to yell at.
Certainly something to follow. And if you're following something in Richmond, it's going to become a whole lot easier, because 30
And slower.
Yes. Well, that presumptively anyway, yes. If you can evade someone at 30 kilometers an hour, more power to you, I suppose. But the speed limit on residential roads in Richmond is going to be reduced to 30 kilometers an hour. This is a decision that is going to be affecting 500 kilometers of roads in Richmond, which seems like a lot, but it is a thing that I think is happening kind of broadly. We covered a while ago how Vancouver was going to be reducing its speed limit to 40 kilometers an hour on non-arterial roads. Toronto's speed limits are 40 kilometers an hour. It's not uncommon that these lower speed limits are coming in because we're realizing that they're just safer. Like,
yeah, the group
substantially safer.
Vision Zero is advocating for no road deaths and uses this as one of its key planks because slower cars kill fewer people. It's just physics. The motion to make this happen in Richmond was brought by councillors Bill McNulty and Cash Heed. Cash Heed's running for mayor in the upcoming election. The staff estimate for this was that the total cost to roll this out would be $175,000 because BC has a default 50 kilometer an hour speed limit. So to set it at 30, the city has to put a 30 kilometer sign at every block in the city. And so the speed limit will not be 30 on those roads until you see that 30 sign go up. And they have some additional traffic calming and public awareness campaigns to roll out to make sure people know about this. But they do say all of that can be funded through existing budgets and plans. And the one downside of this plan is the city center of Richmond is not being included in the 30 zone. So that is a thing Cash Heed hopes to do in the future.
30 kilometers an hour is not a safe speed to get hit by a car. It is safer than being hit by a car going 50 or 60 or 80, certainly, but it is not something that will save you necessarily. It will, however, both improve your survivability if you are hit, and two, give the person who is driving a greater chance to react. And at least presumptively, if someone is obeying the speed limit, they are trying to be a conscientious driver. Of course, we could just ban cars.
And even if people aren't trying to obey the speed limit, I do find they try to stay within 10 to 20. So this reduces speeds from 70 to 50, even at worst. But Matthew, what is the safe speed for an airplane to hit the ground?
Well, it really depends on how you hit the ground. I think that's a really important one. And of course, this will bring us to the way we end every podcast, a little tidbit from Vancouver's history, our Vancouverata. And it is, of course, our delight to bring you the story of TransCanada Airlines Flight 3. This is a flight that on April 28th, 1947, executed a controlled flight into terrain, a phrase that was invented by Boeing engineers in the 1970s. So this accident predates the term controlled flight into terrain. If you're landing, you have your landing gear up and you have a runway in front of you, or alternatively, if you are Captain Sully Sullenberger, a river. You will often kill everyone on board, which is, of course, what happened here. There were 15 occupants of this TransCanada Airlines Flight 3. It was a Lockheed 18-08 Star aircraft, a kind of propeller plane that had taken off from Pearson and stopped in Lethbridge, the natural stopping place and hub of the prairies. And after taking off from Lethbridge and making its way over the Rockies, it was on a standard flight approach. It said it was on this flight approach. It was supposed to go out over the Georgia Strait for about 10 kilometers, turn around, and land at YVR. That didn't happen. It announced that it was going to do this, and then somehow, in the intervening minutes, it crashed into a mountain in North Vancouver.
We're unable to actually find the wreckage for quite a while. They tried for a couple days and went, well, we can't find it. We're just going to presume it's lost. Some hikers in 1994 stumbled across it on September 27th and phoned it in.
Oh, no, they stumbled across.
Okay.
It's weirder than this.
Yes.
The search was massive. It was a rescue operation. 19 aircraft, 4 crash boats, and a U.S. Coast Guard supply vessel were launched in the area trying to find literally anything anywhere. It was not found. Everyone assumed that it had just gone down in the Strait of Georgia and no one had noticed. That is not what happened. It somehow turned north and crashed into the North Shore Range. And in particular, it seems like it had actually turned around and got disoriented because it crashed into the western side of Mount Elsay. Now,
Yeah, which is just north of Seymour.
Yeah. It crashed in the heavily wooded area, and apparently no one noticed for many years. It was not until 1992 when two hikers on this wooded hillside on the side of Mount Elsay stumbled across the wreckage. They went down, they notified someone saying, hey, I think we found a plane crash. Is this important? And apparently it was not so important that anyone felt the need to go immediately, because it was not until 1994 that they actually went and checked out the plane crash on the side of Mount Elsay and determined it to be the wreckage of TransCanada Airlines Flight 3. On the 48th anniversary, two memorials were set up at the crash site. I don't know why two memorials were necessary. Generally, I assume that one is enough. But sometimes memory needs assistance beyond the first memorial. At any rate, it is the deadliest crash to occur in Vancouver. Not, of course, the deadliest air incident related to Vancouver. We all know the big one. It is the one linked to Vancouver that occurred in, I guess, electoral area A, such as it is. Certainly not, or maybe not at the time of the crash, but definitely electoral area A by the time the crash was found decades later. And yeah, it was just people up looking. They were hiking through and working, I believe, for the watershed, like for the Metro Vancouver or whatever, the GVRD water board that led them up to this crash. Deadliest accident, 15 fatalities, no survivors, and a bit of an enduring mystery until the discovery back in the 90s.
So if you see something, say something, and eventually someone will find out.
Yep, it might take 2 years, but it does happen. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Canberra Report. For Leg and Boot Media, I'm Matthew Naylor.
I'm Ian Bushfield.
Good night.